Hi guys, welcome to part 5 of the tutorial on how to draw the chin of the giraffe. So this is actually quite a simple part of the giraffe, and we are going to sort of take the same process with the entire neck as well. So I think this is going to be a good start to get the basics of how to approach the neck. And yeah, so the chin, a couple of things to notice is that the chin is quite light, so you want to be careful that you don't end up going too dark around the spots. Also notice that the spots towards the back part of the jaw are darker than the spots towards the mouth, so we need to make sure that we get the values in the spots correct as well. So we're just going to pay super close attention to the reference photo, and then you'll also notice that the jaw is quite defined, so there's specific shadows that we also need to get right to show the shape and form and dimension of the jaw as well. So let's get stuck into that now. Okay, so moving on to the chin area, we're going to start off by identifying where all those spots are, and then we can do the in-between areas. So I am using my PC1082 chocolate pencil, and I'm going to start putting in these spots. I'm going to put a very light layer down because some of these spots are very light, and then as we get to the back of the chin jaw area, it gets darker. But right now I just want to put the shapes down and make sure I know where it is. I'm not too worried about detail at this point. I just want to get a light layer down in the shape that every spot is in. We'll be focusing on every shape a little later because we need to know which areas of the shape are darker than other areas and give it that proper gradation of value. Now I have not used the etching tool on the chin area at all, so any texture that I'm going to need to create on the chin area, I'm going to have to create that with my pencils. Okay, I don't want to go much further than the chin, so I'm going to use this spot over here as my sort of barrier up to the bottom of the ear for the area that I'm going to be doing today's tutorial in. Okay, so those are all the spots down, so we're just going to leave it at that for the moment. And now I want to use my 70% French Grey PC1074, and I want to create the sort of creases or darker values that show the higher points and the lower points of the chin, or the whole side of the giraffe's face. So I just want to clearly show where this sort of crease is under the eye. And then I want to identify this sort of fold, or the sort of jawline values. So now we sort of have an idea of where the different areas or different sort of, what word am I looking for? Where the definitions of 3-dimension is gonna start popping up. So between the spots we're gonna create some of the darker values. Where there are areas with more shadow, why don't I just say that? And the areas of more shadow which allow the illusion of 3-dimensionality, or I'm not sure. So now I'm going to use this pencil as well to create these soft little hairs. I have noticed how I talk. I say half the sentence and then wait a few seconds before I finish the other half of the sentence. And I only do that while I'm drawing because I'm trying to think of what I'm drawing and talk at the same time, but sometimes it just comes a few seconds later. Well, it's in my head, but it just comes out of my mouth a few seconds later. And yeah, I hope that doesn't sort of bore you, because it does become kind of monotone as I draw and talk, because I just get so consumed by what I'm doing that I don't flow as consistently with my talking as I draw. And I'm still doing it as I'm trying to explain this to you. Oh dear. There's a very subtle sort of dividing line over here. So we don't want to overdo that too much, but the jaw is quite defined on the giraffe. So that is the area we will be focusing on today. So this is how we're creating the illusion of texture with our pencils and not the etching tool, because I haven't etched any of these areas. So when I blend, this is still gonna look textured because of how I'm putting the pencil down. So you don't have to use the etching tool. I know there's many artists out there that don't want to ever damage their paper in any certain way, or in any way at all. So they prefer to not sort of scratch out the paper. Whereas I love it. That is just my favorite thing to do. So I'm using this same pencil to create some of the value in this spot over here. And I'll do the same for these spots here too. That way we're integrating the surrounding colors into the spots, and it just gives it a nice flow, a nice balance. So you always want to keep an eye on your spots as you're working in the surrounding areas to make sure that they don't disappear into the background. Okay, before I get carried away with the spots, I want to carry on. So I'm going to make my spots darker by using my Espresso PC1099. And I'm going to start with the furthest spots that are the darkest. paying very close attention to my reference to make sure that I don't make every part of the spot look exactly the same color, because then it's not going to look realistic. So you want to make some areas darker, some lighter, and just do that according to your reference photo. And also when you have little pieces that sort of stick out of the shape, add them in as well. So that gives the edges more texture too. Now this spot's got a few values, so be careful to not color in too much. So these areas are darker. Please also forgive any sort of background noise that you hear. I always have my dogs with me in the studio, and they aren't exactly the most quiet when they move around, like now. And then they have to lie against the sliding door and push their paws against it, and then they make this noise with their nails. And the amount of times that they do that, it would just be too much of a job to edit those noises out of my videos. And I don't want to lock them outside while I record. Poor things. They're my kids. Okay, so now we must make sure we don't go too dark with these spots, because they are much lighter. But they do still have a fair bit of value. So we want to make sure we add that. Okay, now I want to use my chocolate brown again. So my PC1082 chocolate, and I want to, because this chocolate color has a almost like a red sort of color with it, it really brings out that brighter color. So I want to put that red sort of shade back into these spots that are more towards the front. And then just a little bit in the spots towards the back, and then I want to darken up the spots in the back even more with a dark cool grey. Okay. So now we are using with our dark warm grey. So now we're using 70% warm grey, PC1056, and we are going to pick out those dark areas in these spots. Okay, so we don't want to do anything to these spots in the front for the moment. We just want to focus on getting the value for the back spots right, and they need to be even darker. So I'm going to use my black, my PC935, and increase those darker values even more because that warm grey wasn't quite enough. And then after this I'm going to come back in with my chocolate brown just to give it that reddish tinge back. Okay, now I'm coming back in with my chocolate brown, my PC1082, and I want to go all over these spots to give it that redness back. And then I will also come in with my Espresso PC1099 and add that very rich dark brown color to these areas as well. So for the moment, I'm happy with that. Now, Be careful around your edges. Don't do what I just did and make it wider than what it should be. Okay. Now I want to use my Peach Beige PC1085, and I want to create those warm tones in the bottom of the chin over here because it's reflecting some nice warm colors probably from the neck, and I want to enhance that. There's also some of this color reflected over here, so gently add some color there. And there's some of this color reflected over here. Okay, and just under the eye here as well, actually. Okay. Next, I want to use my Burnt Ochre PC943, and I want to enhance the redness in this area as it's not quite as red as I'd like. Just light little additions of the color. I'm also going to go ahead and add some of this red in these big spots. Actually, in most of the spots. Okay. Now I want to use my 70% Cool Grey PC1065, and I'm going to enhance some of these darker grey values in these areas. So using soft little strokes in the right direction, we're going to add these really subtle shadows or values where we notice that it's a little bit darker between the spots. And this is just going to add so much to the dimension of this area. You're panting like a crazy thing and you're still lying in the sun. I don't think I've ever seen dogs that love the sun this much. In summer it can be 40 degrees and they still want to lie outside on the hot concrete in the sun. It's just crazy. They just love to be very warm all the time. Okay, this area here has got quite a bit of this bluish grey. So we're gonna light circular motions add this color to it as well. Okay, that's starting to look really good. So I think we're ready to blend with our solvent, and then we can see what else is required from there. So I'm using my number 2 West Art acrylic brush. It's quite a firm brush, and there's a tiny bit of solvent on there. So you can see those really rich colors of brown are starting to pop out nicely, and they're blending in beautifully. And because we haven't used our etching tool in this area, they're coming out extremely smooth. And that's what we want. We didn't want that texture to come out in the spots. And that richness in color is just really popping out. I may have made it too rich in color. Okay, now I want to blend the rest of the area. Okay, look how beautifully that's already started to connect with the edges that it wasn't connected to in the beginning. So it's starting to form that nice balance in color, and it's starting to really take shape and connect with the rest of the face. So there's still a bit to do, but that is already a good foundation, or a good first amount of layers. So I am now going to come in with my 70% French Grey PC1074, and I actually want to define my edges more on these spots because they actually are more defined. Some edges come across as being a lot smoother than the others, and these edges are too soft at the moment, so we need to define these a little bit more. This is a darker color, so be careful that you don't sort of outline the shape, so just define the areas that are in this color and still create those little textured strokes to make sure that it still flows, because we haven't textured with the sculpting tool in this area. That's already looking better. So these little ones over here, we're just going to create little strokes and sort of define the shapes of the strokes. And this color is also going to dull down that redness a little bit more, because I find that the red is actually a little bit brighter than what I thought it would be. So this is just going to make it a little more subtle instead of as outspoken as what it is at the moment. I love the values that are coming through on these spots. They're really starting to look realistic, and the different variations in color just really makes it look so good. Okay, so still using this color, I want to work a little bit more on the chin over here. Okay, I love that. So now I'm going to blend with my solvent just in the light areas, and then I'm going to use my white colored pencil to lighten up some of the areas and create more of a sort of textured look in the areas that need it. Too much solvent on my brush. Try not to go over your darker spots too much because you don't want that color to sort of bleed into the edges. You want those edges to stay sharp. Okay, I like that. So now I'm going to sharpen my white pencil and start creating the lighter tones in the chin. So using my white Prismacolor pencil PC1099, I'm going to focus on the areas that have more highlight. So this has more of a highlight in it, which enhances the crease under the eye. Prismas can never stay that sharp. As much as you'd like them to. There's an area here that sort of has almost like a white little vein kind of thing going on here. And then I want to create a textured look, so I'm going to use small little soft strokes all along here. And it may not seem like much of a difference, but these little differences really do help. See, now even though this area didn't have any etching in it, there's still a hint of texture. You can still get a feel of the softness of the chin and the furriness of some of the areas. So this area I'm going to just enhance, pressing a little bit firmer than normal to create that lighter highlight on the chin. Over here as well. And that's going to give it a nice look of three-dimensionality. Of dimension. Nice look of dimension. So adding the white like this really does give it, it makes the highlights stand out nicely, and it does give it a lot of shape and form. So this is a very important part. Now, Prismas highlight much better if you use them over polychromos pencils, but for this one I was asked if I could just use the Prismacolor pencils. So this one is Prismas only, but ideally I like to mix my Faber-Castell polychromos and my Prismacolors, and the lighter Prismacolors just layer so much brighter on top of the polychromos pencils than they do on top of multiple layers of the Prisma wax pencils. So all my bottom layers I would ideally do with my Faber-Castell polychromos pencils, and all my definition and top layers I would use my Prismacolor pencils. what else do I want to do? I want to add a little more of this grayish value. So using my 70% Cool Grey PC1065, I want to add some more shadow over here. And over here. And I want to come in and add a couple of darker little areas between here. And then I want to just soften that up a little bit more with my solvent. So it doesn't look grainy. And now I feel like I still need some more. I need some brown, so I'm going to use my Sepia PC948, and I need to enhance the brown over here. Okay, now I am finally satisfied with the way the chin looks. I may add touch-ups a little later as I think I need to add anything. So when I do the neck, I might decide that I need to add more, or I need to lighten up more or darken up more, or whatever it is. And we will also reassess every part of this entire giraffe at the end of this whole drawing to make sure that we finish, to make sure that we've added what we need to add, and we check to see if we've missed anything by observing the reference closely and going through every part of what we have drawn. Okay, so congratulations on getting this far. If you have managed to get to this part of the tutorial, please post your progress photos on Patreon and show the rest of the patrons how you guys are going with these tutorials. And me, of course, I really want to see how these tutorials are working for you and how well you can do this, because I want to know if this is a good method for you, if I need to improve on anything, or if you guys are happy with this teaching method. Okay, so well done on completing the chin. Now you can look at your picture and be like, wow, I finished the entire head and it looks amazing. And now the last part is just to do that neck, and I'm sure you guys want to jump straight into doing the neck because it's going to be exciting to see the entire thing take shape and get it finished. So a couple of things that we learned while doing the chin is to focus on the values of the spots and to create those richer red colors within. We also noticed that with doing the lighter area around the spots, nothing is completely white, but we allowed ourselves to layer in such a way that we could use our white pencil in the end to create any extra highlights that are required, and that just gave it a lot more form and dimension. And that is what I love about the Prismacolor pencils, is the allowance for putting light colors on top of dark colors. So congratulations on getting this part done, and I will see you guys in the final tutorial.